At last count, there were 28,000 aircraft registered in Canada. With a third of those, large and small, over 20 years old, it's pretty clear that effective maintenance information is going to take on a bigger and bigger role. Hi, I'm Rod Charlebois. And whether you're an AME with your own shop up north or an engine or avionics technician with a major carrier, everyone's goals are to maximize safety and minimize downtime. Transport Canada's SDR, or Service Difficulty Reporting Program, directly supports those goals. Most of you have heard about it. A good number have taken part in the program. The problem is, a lot of people see the SDR as just more paperwork. As a result, it's believed there are a large number of real service problems and potential hazards going unreported. Which brings me to the two objectives of this video. The first is to clear up some of the misconceptions of the program, like it's a way to let Transport Canada look over your shoulder. The second, more important purpose is to show what the program actually does and how easily it works, so that you can generate more service difficulty reports with fewer hassles. The system isn't perfect yet, but it's improving. And with any luck, I'll convince the skeptics that the program really can improve air safety. But you be the judge. The SDR program was established by Transport Canada in 1985. Its overriding objective is to promote higher levels of air safety across the country. And it does that by promoting a constant exchange of good information about service difficulties. It helps to think of the program as a continuous information loop that begins and ends with the people most likely to detect a problem, which is usually you. In fact, the SDR program depends completely on maintenance people, aircraft owners and operators, and on manufacturers filling out the SDR form with a description of the service difficulty, then sending it in to their regional Transport Canada office. By the way, the identity of individuals and companies submitting reports remains confidential. The information is then recorded and analyzed to see if corrective or other action is necessary. This is where the information loop starts to get interesting, because it often involves input from the manufacturers and foreign airworthiness authorities, as well as from Canadian maintainers, operators, and engineering laboratories. If there is a problem which could affect safety, it's communicated back to the aviation community through various publications and notices like Service Difficulty Alerts and this Feedback magazine. What it really boils down to is a mechanism that encourages people in the industry to share valuable information. Your SDR could trigger a warning to your counterparts thousands of miles away. Now, if you're familiar with the SDR program, you'll know that the publications and notices we've just seen are sent out to all AMEs and to all owners or operators of the aircraft that might be affected by the problem in question. However, that doesn't stop you or a company you know from being put on the mailing list if you're interested. I'll tell you more about who to call at the end of the show. Okay, let's move on and see who gets involved once a service difficulty is spotted. This business you're in is a billion-dollar industry. But with over 19,000 aircraft maintenance people employed across Canada, who exactly is responsible? Well, that depends on who you are. Because for some segments of the industry, service difficulty reporting is mandatory. For others, it's voluntary. The mandatory participants include all sizes of Canadian commercial aircraft operators, along with the manufacturers of aeronautical products. They also involve all firms that have been approved by Transport Canada for the maintenance, repair, and overhaul of these products. This is Chapter 591 of Transport Canada's Airworthiness Manual, the part that deals with service difficulty reporting. It lays out the details of mandatory reporting, and so does your company's approved maintenance or quality control manual. If you work for one of the 1,300 organizations which falls under the mandatory reporting requirements, you should be aware of and follow your company's approved reporting procedures. However, you always have the option of personally submitting a report in confidence whenever you believe it's warranted. Now, if you're in the non-commercial sector, reporting a service difficulty is purely voluntary. Here I'm talking to those of you who are maintenance professionals or owners and pilots who maintain and operate over 20,000 of these kinds of aircraft. So what exactly does Transport Canada consider to be a service difficulty? Well, they have a formal definition, but in plain terms, it is any technical problem that could affect the safety of an aircraft or its occupants. Now that's a pretty broad statement, but frankly, it's virtually impossible to identify every type of service difficulty out there. The overriding criterion, though, for anyone trying to decide what's reportable should be that it could affect safety. That's pretty basic. Could affect safety. Some reportable service difficulties are pretty obvious. An engine failure or fire, problems with any flight control, malfunctions in a rotor drive system, and so on. But what about the not so obvious things you come across, like a small crack in a landing gear component, a fractured bolt in a pulley bracket, discrepancies in a parts manual? Only you can decide if it should be reported by asking yourself whether this is likely to affect the safety of the aircraft or its occupants. Or could this situation exist on another aircraft somewhere else? Or can I take the risk of not reporting it? You remember the old cliche, the job ain't over till the paperwork's done? Well, these aircraft maintenance students are getting hints on how to speed up the paperwork. Transport Canada's Gary King is an SDR analyst, and he's walking them through the SDR form.
Okay, so you've found a service difficulty and you've repaired the problem. The next step, filling out the form, should be relatively simple because you have all the information available. Now, the information we need to do our job and analyze the problem is the following. We require the actual date of the occurrence, the aircraft model and serial number. The prop and power plant model are important only if it's a prop or power plant problem. So if it's a landing gear problem, we're not really interested in that information. We also want and need the actual part name, the part number, and the part condition. For example, if it's broken or cracked or corroded. Finally, we would like a good description of the problem. That will really help us complete the job. And your name and phone number in case we have to get back to you.
You didn't mention item number 7 of the codes. Is it important?
Well, the codes here are very important to help us fill in the information you send in to put in the database. However, if you provide a good description of the problem, we can fill in the codes ourselves. But don't let the codes get in the way of sending in an SDR.
Yes, what do you consider a good problem description? What are the important elements?
Well, the important elements of a good problem description are the 5 W's of writing. The who, what, why, where, and when. And if you can provide that information to us, then we can complete the form.
How do I know if I should report a problem or not?
Well, that's a good question. And generally, if you're in any doubt at all about whether you should send in an SDR on a problem, the key is send it in. Most of the reports we get are good ones.
A question we hear from a number of you is, hey, what happens to all this SDR information after we've taken the time to send it in? Well, to find out both what and why, let's follow a real SDR that was sent in by an Alberta AME. It indicated a crack had been found in the wing skin of a Cessna 402B. First, it was investigated by the Regional Continuing Airworthiness Inspector in Edmonton, who strongly recommended to Airworthiness Headquarters in Ottawa that further action should be taken. In Ottawa, the details were entered into the computerized database that contains about 200,000 SDRs submitted from Canada and the United States over the past 5 years. The system lets airworthiness personnel right across Canada retrieve and analyze all sorts of data, and that helps them spot specific trends or patterns of service difficulties. The fact is, every SDR you send in gets recorded in this database, even if it doesn't warrant specific action at the time.
Somewhere here. Yeah.
The Cessna SDR triggered an investigation that brought together a lot of different people, including Transport Canada headquarters and regional airworthiness personnel, plus the operator who submitted the report, the aircraft's manufacturer, and the FAA in the States. Through telephone conferences, reviews of drawings and manuals, and inspection of similar aircraft, it was determined that the problem could probably affect both the Cessna 300 and 400 series because of their similar structures. Which brings us to the return flow of service difficulty information to the aviation community. And there are a number of ways that this occurs. Publications like Service Difficulty Advisories, Service Difficulty Alerts, and Feedback Magazine are all used to keep you informed and up to date. In the case of the Cessna SDR, a service difficulty alert was sent out 2 months after the report was submitted, recommending the inspection and monitoring of Cessna 300 and 400 series. Transport Canada used its computerized distribution system to quickly alert the entire maintenance community and all 367 operators of the same type of aircraft to the potential hazard. A follow-up article also appeared in Feedback. More important, as a result of this one SDR, at least 4 more operators in Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta found and reported similar wing skin cracks and fixed them before any serious incident occurred. So the SDR information loop certainly came full circle in that case. Now, not all actions are as specific or as prompt as the previous example. For instance, one study about landing gear problems, which was reported in Feedback, involved analyzing hundreds of failure reports collected over a 14-year period. So even if the SDR you send in today doesn't warrant immediate action, it may later prove to be the trigger for a general advisory notice or a change of inspection procedures. The better the data, the better the feedback. If the benefits are measured by the experience of working maintenance and flight operations people, the SDR program does seem to be working.
A lot of the problems that come out and that apply to our airplanes, we have found some of them in our airplanes. So it's been very, very useful. It saved us a lot of time because we were able to repair these problems quickly before anything got major.
The manufacturer is very fond of saying, oh, that's never happened in our product before. It's never happened before. Where now we can have a database. We can go back and say, well, that's not correct. I can now prove to you there's been 12 of these or 18 of these or even 4 of these.
So what's the future for the SDR program? Clearly, improved access, flexibility, and faster response are what you want.
I can see some room for improvement with the SDR system in the future.
Jerry Villiers is program manager for SDR.
One area being the bulletin board service that we can open up to interested users across the country that would allow direct data entry or retrieval of information from the shared database. This would improve the information loop tremendously. Also, I see a global exchange of information happening where various participants from different countries can get together and exchange the data via magnetic tape to allow for a shared database on a global basis.
And that about wraps it up. We want to thank all those people we consulted before and during the making of this video. Some of you had some pretty pointed opinions. And those ideas and concerns are helping to shape the SDR program as it evolves and improves for its users. We want to thank you, the people watching, because if you understand the value of the program and you participate, then it can only get better. Finally, last year a total of almost 2,000 SDR forms were submitted in Canada. Those of you who sent them in know who you are. Thank you. Now tell a buddy to do the same thing. Remember, we can only keep you in the loop if you keep us in the loop. Thanks for watching.